Okay, so quickly we're going to start to talk about how to figure out the cost of the project. So for this one, we're going to use our night table, design the grade 9 night table. And as you can see, we have our drawing done in Sketchup. We could print this off. It would be really handy to make sure we're not flipping back and forth. But it's got all of our basic measurements that we need. So first thing that I wanted to discuss is that not everything on a drawing might be there in plain words for you, plain numbers. You might have to do a little bit of mathematics to figure it out, depending on how the design was done. So for example, we don't know the distance between these shelves unless we did some math, because they're 3/4 inch thick for each piece of material, for each side. 3/4 times 2 is 1.5. 19 inches wide is our project, so take away 1.5 is 17.5. However, we could, to save a little bit of time, we could dimension the width of our shelves exactly on here so that we know exactly that it's 18 inches. All right, so getting to how to figure out the cost of a project. Well, the first step in figuring out the cost of a project is we want to go into creating a parts or cut list. Okay, so the first part that we're going to have is we're going to have the sides. I usually like to start with the biggest pieces. So the sides, if we look at our project, there again, because of our rabbets at the end, they're not going to be 20 inches. They're going to be 19.5. So we can input that, so our length, and the length is usually just whatever the longer measurement is. Okay, so 19.5 inches. Our width of that is 15 3/4 of an inch. The thickness for all of this, with the exception of the back, is going to be 3/4, and that's really important that we keep track of what thickness the material is. All right, so the quantity. How many sides do we have? We have 2. Okay, now we're going to skip down. We're not going to worry about this part over here. This is part of our cost calculations, and so we're going to move on down. Next, let's go with the top, which would be the next biggest. So the top is 19 inches wide by 15 3/4 inches. Now, starting to notice a pattern here. If I had another piece here that was maybe 10 inches long and 15 3/4 inches wide, well, you know, normally we say to put the longer measurement in the length, but if you're seeing a pattern here, it's nice and neat to have it all in one column, and then that's a reminder that when you're cutting your material, it's good to plan your cuts, make the most out of the use of the wood. Then we know that, hey, we can cut a big 15 3/4 inch strip first, and then we're going to cut our lengths off of that. Okay, so same thing again, we're going to do 3/4 of an inch thick, and how many tops do we have? We only have 1. Okay. Next we have our shelves, not shelves, shelves, and our shelves are, I believe they're 18 inches. Let's double check. Yes. So they're 18 inches long by, once again, 15 3/4 inches wide, and once again 3/4 inches thick, and we have 2 shelves. Okay, last part that we are missing is the back piece. The back piece is, you know what, we have room here, so I'm going to skip a row, and you'll see why in a minute. So the back, and the back size is something that we forgot to dimension. So quickly, let's figure that out. Well, it's going to be the full width, so that is 19 inches, and the height of our back is going to be 10.5 inches. All right. So we've got 19 inches wide, well, length, and 10.5 inches wide, and our thickness is only going to be 1/4 of an inch. How many of them do we have? We have 1. Okay. Now, reason that you're going to see that this is filled in this way, why I skipped a line, is because it's important that we know the costs of the material. And 3/4 inch material typically has a different cost than 1/4 inch material. For this, we usually end up using 3/4 inch birch plywood, which is in the cost list that I provided to you. Currently, for shop grade birch, I believe, let's just double check that. I want to say it's about $50 in that range. Yeah, $49.99 for 3/4 inch birch, and the other one that we want to know is a 1/4 inch good one side birch plywood, which is our back piece, and that's $39.99. So $49.99, $39.99. So that is important when we figure this out. So first part that we're going to do now is we're working with sheet goods. That's what plywoods are. That's what anything that you buy that comes as a sheet is a sheet. Typical standard size for a sheet is 48 by 96 or 96 by 48, 8 feet by 4 feet, and whatever your thickness is. If we're working with lumber, so typically like 2x4s, 1x4s, 2x2s, dimensional lumber, or steel, we're going to figure out that cost out with lineal feet. And then hardwoods is a completely different calculation, board feet. We're not going to get into that in this video. So right now we're only going to focus on sheet goods. So first off, you want to take 19.5 times 15 3/4 on your calculator. So 19.5, and I'm just working on my calculator here, 0.75. And then we're going to times it by our quantity, not our thickness. That's where some people mess up. It's only our length times our width times our quantity. And that's going to give us 614.25. And you'll see in a minute, but that's going to be our square inches. We're working with area here. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is 19 times 15.75 equals 299.25, and then our shelves, we're going to go 18 times 15.75 times 2 equals 567. Okay, the next part that we're going to do is our back, even though this is different material. So we're going to take 19 times 10.5 and equals 199.5. Okay, what does all this mean? Well, at the bottom of your page, I've given you some instructions. So for sheet goods, we add the total square inches of the same thickness of sheet material together. Okay, so we need to, what that's saying is that these are the same thickness, the 3/4, so we're going to add those all together. Okay, so down in my notes, I'm going to put 3/4 inch equals, and we're going to add those amounts all up. So we've got 614.25 plus 299.25 plus 567, and that's going to be 1480.5. And what is that in? That's square inches. Okay. I'm going to go down, and we're going to go with 1/4 inch. Now, well, we know our square inches because we've only got one piece of it, so 199.5. From this 1480.5 square inches, in a sheet of plywood, a standard sheet of plywood, 48 times 96 inches is going to be 4608. So 4,608 square inches in a sheet of plywood. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 14, just like figuring out a percent on a test. We're trying to figure out the percentage of the sheet that we need for this project, because I'm charging you the exact cost of what you use with a little bit of scrap added, and we'll get to that, not for the entire sheet. So 1480.5, we're going to divide that by 4608, which is then equal out to 0.32 1, and I'm going to round it to 4 decimal places, 3. And that's our, now if we times that by 100, we would end up showing that we're using 32% of our sheet of plywood. Leaving it in decimal form, we are then going to multiply that by the cost of our material. So the cost of a sheet of birch, 3/4 inch sheet of birch, is $49.99. So we're going to multiply that times 49.99, and we get $16.06. At this point, when we're dealing with money, we're going to round to the nearest cent. So 16.06. You might be wondering, well, isn't that enough? Not quite. What we're also going to do is we're going to use a 20% scrap charge on this material. So typically for grades 7, 8, 9, I use a 20% scrap because we tend to make more mistakes when we're learning. And as we get into grade 10, 11, 12, I'm hoping that you've learned some things by then, and we'll use a 15% scrap charge. When I figure out projects for myself, I typically allow for a 10 to 15% scrap, depending on what it is. So the next thing then, we're going to go with 16.06, and we're going to multiply that then by, I said 20%. Well, we could multiply it by 0.2, and that's going to tell us what the actual cost of that scrap is, but we don't care about that. We care about what the total cost is of the scrap. So we're going to times it by itself plus 20%, so 1.2. And that is going to give us $19.27. Okay, so that's for our 3/4 inch. The next part that we're going to do is we're going to take 1.995, and you're right, we're going to divide it by 4608. I knew you knew that. And that's going to give us 199.5, and we're going to divide that by 4608, and I guess I'm mistyping that up above, but you'll get the idea. I'll just add that in so nobody misses that. 1480.5 divided by 4608 equals 0.3213. Okay, and down here we're using 0.0433. So we're using just over 4% of a sheet, not very much. Now we're going to take that amount, 0.0433 times the cost of our material. And remember that 1/4 inch good one side birch is $39.99 before taxes. We're going to get to that right away. So 0.0433 times 39.99 equals $1. $1.73. Now we're going to take that, we're going to times it by, you're right, 1.2. So 1.73 times 1.2 for our scrap equals $2.08. So now we're at our subtotal. So we're going to go with our 3/4 inch total cost before taxes equals $19.27. We're then going to add our 1/4 inch cost, which was $2.08. So we add that, and we get $21.40. $1,000,000.35. Are we done? Not quite, because we live in Saskatchewan where we have 5% GST and 6% PST. So our taxes then are 11%. How do we figure out total cost with taxes? Same thing, we could figure out what the actual cost of the tax was by just multiplying this by 0.11, but instead we're going to multiply it by 1.11 to just get the total cost of our project. So times 1.11 equals $23.70. That is the cost of our project.